Hello, it's me, Ariza Gaming, and welcome back to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, the series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how you can solve them easily and efficiently. So today we're going to talk about metal volcanoes again, and we did a video about taming metal volcanoes so that you can extract the hot molten metal out of them safely with your duplicants so you can use it to build stuff at room temperature. But the previous video we did was focused on boiling polluted water and salt water in the environment and setting it up as part of your base so that you had the clean water coming out of your steam turbines that you could use to feed to electrolyzers or cool down and feed to plants, etc. And that was the focus of that build. But since then, I've learned a fair bit, and I've got a way to make a slightly more space efficient and less complicated metal volcano tamer, where we're just going to set it up in a closed loop, and then eventually you can just completely forget about it. You can leave it just running on the asteroid with all the tungsten volcanoes, for instance, without any duplicates necessarily looking after it. And the way it's going to be set up is also going to be more robust for high flow rate volcanoes. Here we've got an aluminium volcano that erupts a lot at once. It's erupting 16.1 kilograms per second for 23 seconds. That's a huge influx of metal coming in. Because the refined metals tile up at about 160 kilograms of tile instead of forming debris, you don't want that to happen because digging out tiles removes 50% of the mass, and then you're removing 50% of your metal. So that's not good. But this new design will make sure that it doesn't tile up even with these really high flow rates, and even when it's geotuned to the max. So we're going to handle 32.2 kilograms per second of aluminium with this design in the end. But yeah, it's going to be similar to last time, but we're just going to simplify it a little bit and just focus on getting it set up in a closed loop. So let's get started. Let's just clear out some space to start with. You're going to want a 4x10 room in the bottom for the volcano. You can make it smaller if you want and have one steam turbine, but I'm just going to use 2 steam turbines just in case you want to future-proof this and geotune the metal in future once you've actually got your refined phosphorus production going. So yeah, this seems like enough space for now. I'm going to build it so that the volcano is on the left in this build. But you can reverse everything pretty easily, it doesn't matter too much. So first of all, we're just going to set up the tiles and the overall layout. So again, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 4 high room, 4x10 space, and then we're going to have the steam turbines up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to clear that tile, we're going to clear these tiles, and then we're going to add some tiles here. What we're going to do is we're going to pour some liquids down here so that we've actually got a nice liquid lock so that the rooms are completely thermally sealed. And to do that, you're going to want a few things for this build. You are going to want plastic because you're building steam turbines. The steam turbines are going to go up here. And you're going to want conductive liquids that can withstand relatively high temperatures. In other words, you're probably going to want to have oil. So we're going to build some steam turbines up here. Go raid an oil biome before you do this. We're going to put the steam turbines up here. We're just going to pour a little layer of oil in here to start with. You can just take a bottle of oil, say, like, I don't know, like 100 kilograms. Just dump it somewhere in the room, and then that's going to flow out this way. It's going to come past this tile. It's going to build up in this tile as it flows. Or in this case, it hasn't. Okay, but what you can do if it doesn't is you could build a tile in here and then delete it. And then that will result in a vacuum staying here. See, now it's flowing. I think it was just a bit... I think I was just confused by the viscosity of the liquid. In any case, eventually, once the liquid's flowed out of here, this little blob up here is going to drop down, and you're going to have a liquid lock, and that's going to completely seal it off. You can put your gas pump in here, pump all the gases out, and replace it with something conductive. You can pour small quantities of other conductive liquids on top, or you can just do what I do and just fill it with hydrogen and call it a day. The liquid is going to be providing most of the conductivity for this room, so yeah, that's all you really need to do for that. And we're going to do the same for the volcano room, but we're going to do it slightly differently. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a conductive tile down here. If you're going in an oil biome, you'll have diamond, so you can just build a diamond window tile down here, and that's absolutely fine. You can build a metal tile in here if it's got a higher melting point than your volcano, but it shouldn't actually reach the point anyways. But diamond is probably the safest material to build out of. So we'll put that in there, and then we're just going to put a little bit more oil in this bit over here. So just a little teensy bit, like say 50 kilograms. And then that's going to pour out. That's going to form a vacuum in here eventually. You may need to build a tile and then sort of deconstruct it. And then it should behave in a minute. And then again, you can just vent out this room. You can remove all the gases. So yeah, we'll just vacuum it out, just to show what that looks like. And that's the starting point that you more or less want for this build. You want the volcano to be... You don't necessarily have to dig up the volcano yet. Don't remove the tile unless you're ready for it to erupt. If it's going to erupt a bit too early, if you've dug out the area and it's going to erupt before you're ready for it, build a Tempshift plate of coal on this middle tile. And then the refined metal from the volcano is hot enough, it will immediately melt the coal. It will cook the coal into refined carbon. It will form a tile, and then the volcano will block itself. So if you dig it up too early, just do that. But I'm going to assume that you're not doing that. So we've got our volcano room just down here, and then there's a few different things we're going to want to do setting it up. It's not going to be super complicated. But what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, we're going to just place all the buildings, and then I'll explain what we're going to do. So we're going to put an auto sweeper in here. Most of these buildings will need to be steel unless I say otherwise. The steam in here, we're going to get it to 200 degrees C. The reason we're going to have the steam temperature that high is because if you're running steam turbines at lower temperatures, they're generating less power, they're taking less heat out per turbine. When people usually build metal volcano tamers, they have a lot of self-cooled steam turbines. So they're running at steam that's about 135 degrees, but we're going to run it hotter. That's going to save space. And there's a minor efficiency penalty for running them hotter compared to running lots of lower temperature steam turbines, but it's not enough that you're really going to care. The metal volcano heat is still going to be way more than the power generated from that heat is going to be way more than the power it takes to run the cooling for the turbines. So we're just gonna set up to run at 200 degrees C. So this auto sweeper is going to go here. That's going to be able to pick up any metal that drops down as debris on these tiles and deliver it to the conveyor loader. We're going to put that over here. This is also going to be made out of steel. And then, here's the trick that I didn't show you guys in the last video. We're actually going to use a conveyor meter. Now, this is a very interesting building that will allow us to send out lots of consistent small packets of metal on our conveyor rail. And this is great because small packets cool down a lot more quickly. They're a lot more conductive because their mass is much lower. So we can use this to really finely control the flow rate of metal out of this setup, and then that's going to ensure it's all cooled to room temperature very quickly in a simpler manner than in the last video. So what we're going to do is we're going to place it here. And the other thing is, you don't actually need to make this out of steel. It doesn't have an overheat temperature. Just make sure it doesn't melt. So maybe don't build it out of lead. You'll probably be alright building it out of lead, but I wouldn't recommend it. So we're going to put the conveyor meter there. We'll explain more about that in a bit. And then we're going to put a few more things in here. We're going to put a thermo aqua tuner in here. This has to be made out of steel. The steam is going to get too hot for you to really use gold amalgam. That's going to overheat 175 degrees C. So you're going to have to use steel for this. And then we'll just put in a liquid pipe thermosensor. Again, you can just make this with the metal from the volcano. This area over here is not ever going to be exposed to the hot metal from the volcano directly. So it doesn't really matter too much what you make this out of. So we're going to put that there. Then we're going to hook that up with some automation wire. That's going to go here. You're going to set this to whatever temperature you want your coolant to be. You want your output refined metal to be. So we're just going to set it to about 20 degrees here. This thermo aqua tuner is going to cool both the steam turbines and the refined metal. The refined metal is going to get cooled down from 200 degrees to 20 degrees in this room through the oil. So that's going to go there. And then in terms of more buildings, we're going to plug in the conveyor meter to its own reset port. And then what we'll do is we'll actually set the limit on this meter to the average output of the volcano. Now, we need to analyze this to actually calculate that average, but once you have analyzed it with a dupe, you can calculate that average and put it in here. It's usually around 0.5 kilograms per second for an untamed metal volcano or an ungeotuned metal volcano. So you're pretty safe putting that in, but do analyze it and update this to suit afterwards. Because basically, while the volcano is going to be erupting, we're just going to have a constant trickle of metal coming out via the conveyor meter. So the net amount of metal entering and leaving the room during an eruption cycle is going to be 0. And then all the metal will be dumped out, and then it'll be dormant, and then there won't be anything going on while the room is dormant. And then some more buildings. We're just going to put a smart battery in here. We're going to use this to run a few things, and also store a bit of excess power from the steam turbines, so it can self-start a bit easier. So we'll just put that there. That needs to be made out of steel. And then we're going to put a thermosensor in here. And again, it doesn't matter too much what you make this out of. We're going to set this to above 200 degrees. So the steam turbines are going to get plugged into this. And they're only going to run if the room is actually above 200 degrees. Because we want to make sure that we're sucking out as much heat as possible per turbine. So we're just going to set up like that. And then we're going to put the actual output vent for the steam turbines down here. Now this bit is very interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to dump 2 different liquids here. And because we've already got plastic, I'm going to assume you have plastic so you can make naphtha. But the one thing you might need is some uranium. On a lot of asteroids, you will start with a uranium lump nearby. This isn't necessarily the case on the spaced out asteroids, but on most classic asteroids, you will find some uranium nearby. If you've got a radioactive crust, you should also be in luck with that. But I like talking about liquid uranium in these videos, because if we place some down, what we could do, you could build a heavy wire out of uranium ore, 100 kilograms per tile, put that there. When the volcano erupts, it will melt the uranium in place. But if we look in here at liquid uranium, so the funny thing about this is the uranium ore melts at 133 degrees C. This is exactly 1,000 degrees less than in real life. But in this game, it melts at 133 degrees C. In practice, about 136 degrees C, you're going to have liquid uranium. And this is a liquid that's as conductive and has as high a specific heat capacity as oil, except it doesn't boil into a gas until 4,132 degrees C. So this metal is the absolute perfect temperature exchange with metal volcanoes. This will even work for a tungsten volcano in a vacuum. Tungsten volcanoes don't get this high. So yeah, you'll do that. You'll have a little bit of liquid uranium in the bottom. And you could build the wire there and just melt it. That's how I normally do it in my runs. But in this case, we're just going to add some in sandbox mode just to speed things up. So there we go. 100 kilograms per tile. That's all good. And so the other thing we're going to do, you're going to want to build a Tempshift plate. You're going to want to boil a plastic Tempshift plate. You can do this safely by having the oil in here and then build the plastic Tempshift plate so it's interacting with the oil and it's next to the thermal aquatuner. And then just run the thermal aquatuner for a bit, cooling something else. Eventually, the plastic Tempshift plate will get hot enough that it will melt in a fairly controlled manner into naphtha. And the naphtha won't boil. Naphtha is a very interesting liquid as well. One of the main things that's interesting about it is how bloomin' difficult it is to spell. But yeah, this doesn't boil until 540 degrees C either. It's not particularly conductive, but it is a liquid. And the important thing in this case is it's viscous. What you can do is you could take 30 kilograms per tile of naphtha liquid, and then, hold on, where is it? Here it is. 30 kilograms per tile of naphtha liquid. And what you can do is if you put it on these tiles, if we unpause it, it's not actually going to leak onto the vent here. So you can have, if we go into the materials overlay, you can have one liquid down here and then another liquid up here. And this is the key to this whole build. Because what will happen is the metal will spawn on this middle tile here in the liquid. Because liquids have a 625 times thermal conductivity bonus with each other, it doesn't matter that the naphtha is not very conductive as a material, it will still very quickly immediately condense the metal from the metal volcano. So the debris will form up here before this bottom liquid gets displaced. The debris will then drop onto this tile, and then it won't actually be able to interact temperature-wise with the metal coming in from this middle tile. So you'll get debris lumps dropping every second that won't actually be interacting with each other and having a chance to melt. You do need a fair bit of steam in the room to make sure the heat capacity of the room is high enough that it doesn't just... the naphtha doesn't just boil into sour gas. But you could do that. You could add loads of liquid in here. Because we've got the liquid metal down here, and you could use oil for this as well, by the way. You don't have to use liquid uranium. I like using liquid uranium, but you don't have to. Because this liquid vent is under 100 kilograms of pressure, you can dump the steam, or any water you want, into a pipe here, and the metal's not going to get pushed out of the way. This means you can pressurize this room with as much steam as you want. The more steam you have in the room, the more the temperature is going to hold exactly around 200 degrees C, and the less power is going to be wasted. So that's basically summarizing everything that's going on with that. You want to dump some liquid in this, and then you'll want to... that will get boiled, so... we'll just put, let's say, 1,000 kilograms per tile of steam in here. And we'll set this to 200 degrees C. The Volcano will cook all of this eventually. So we've done this in our runs on Twitch, so I'm just going to put it in here just to speed things up. So there we go. So now we have the steam. That's all good. None of the water is going to leak out of here. What I would say is, any tiles where you don't have liquids, if it's steam just touching the insulated tile, you're going to want to double up. Because the gases can exchange heat into the tiles pretty well. But if there's a liquid involved, it doesn't really transfer very well through the insulated tile. So, for the most part, it's alright. What I would say is... maybe let the oil drip down onto this tile as well, and then you can do it like this. And then we're completely thermally sealed. Even though these tiles are going to gradually heat up from the steam, they're not going to... the heat isn't going to leak out into the base like this. So, that is what the buildings look like in here. So let's set up a few more bits. First of all, let's just set up the liquid piping. So, obviously, eventually, we're going to be dumping the steam turbine output into the Volcano. You can make this out of igneous rock as well, that's fine. You can use ceramic if you've got it, but it doesn't really matter. You can run a regular liquid pipe made of regular rock through the insulated tiles, and it's absolutely fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send it around down here. And then what I'm going to do, this is a vacuum, so again, we can have a regular tile there as well. And then I'm just going to put a pipe bridge here so it's not interacting with this liquid. So we'll just put a pipe bridge there. And then this liquid pipe is going to come down here. And then we're going to feed it under here. So again, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bridge here. And then that's going to go around, that's going to go up. And then what we'll do is we'll put a bridge here. We'll put a bridge here because this is where we're going to actually feed in the thermal aquatuna pipe. So that's just going to go there. And then this pipe up here is going to be insulated because this is directly interacting with the Volcano and everything. So that's what that's going to look like. It's nice to have a few different bridges here. Probably don't necessarily need this one. In fact, I think what we'll do... let's simplify this a little bit. We'll just put an insulated tile there. This isn't directly interfacing temperature-wise with this, so this should be fine. But we want a bridge here anyways, for other reasons. So that's where the steam pipe water is going to come from. And if you want to feed other water into it, what you can do is you can just put a bridge here. But that is going to leak heat out via that way. You could just feed it in here directly from another water source, and that's probably what we'll do later. But to be honest, these steam turbines are going to run, so we won't show that for now. And then we're going to set up the actual coolant pipe for the thermal aquatuna. This is going to do something very similar to what we've done before. We're just going to set up a bypass like this. So we're going to have insulated pipe here. This is where the loop starts. We're going to put a liquid bridge on here. Igneous rock, again, is fine for all of this, but use ceramic if you've got it. And then we're going to drag the pipe up here. So what this does, as you've probably seen before on my videos, if it's going to prioritize liquid that's getting cooled by the aquatuna, and then if the liquid isn't getting cooled, it's just going to recirculate the liquid anyways. So that's going to make sure that it's all nice and recirculatory. We'll put a liquid bridge here just so that it's not conducting that much heat into the steam. Saves an insulated tile. pipe tile. And then that's going to go up here. And then we're just going to run it through the oil. You can run it through the hydrogen as well. We're going to make some radiant liquid pipe. You can make this out of whatever you want. This is an aluminium volcano. Aluminium is the most conductive material. It's not going to get super hot in here. So we're just going to plug it in like this. You can just run it like this. That's going to be conductive enough. It's going to be fine. So that's what we're going to do. The hydrogen is mostly just here for the metal. So that's going to go in there. And then we're just going to hook that up at this end. We're going to set this back down. And then we're going to feed this back into the loop. So we're just going to run this under here. In fact, you don't actually need this pipe. This pipe can be regular pipe, because it's in the insulated tile. And then this pipe can be insulated, and then that can run up here. Make sure you don't bridge over the insulated tile, otherwise that's going to bypass insulation and leak heat from the steam room, which you really don't want. But that's what that's going to look like. And then if we want to hook up some polluted water, you just set up a liquid pump down here. Anyway, you've got some polluted water. Doesn't really matter what temperature it is when you start. You can actually entirely self-power this thing if you pour the water in here to start. The steam turbines will kick in and power everything once it gets hot enough. So I'm not actually going to use the dev generator this time. We're just going to make some conductive wire. This shouldn't get... If you dump enough water in here, this shouldn't get hot enough to melt any wires. So I'm going to make this all out of aluminium. That's fine. So it's going to go there, and then we can just hook these up like this. And then we'll just pump that in, we'll just pipe that into the pump. There you go. One thing you can do as well, that I forgot to mention, you can put doors here. If you put doors here, they're not going to get too hot. Because there's the vacuum, and then it's not actually interacting temperature-wise. But the reason we're doing this is because then, if we do that, it makes the steam turbine room a power plant. If you've only got one steam turbine in the room, if you're making it for a smaller volcano, one that produces less heat, like a gold volcano or a tungsten volcano, just put a regular battery in here, like one of the small ones, and you can still fit it in like a 6-wide space. Or you can put a smart battery or a jumbo battery in there, or a power transformer. They'll all work. And then you can tune these to get even more power out of them if you want with microchips. So yeah, that's the piping. Then I think we've gone over the automation. There's one more thing I didn't talk about with the automation. So normally what we do is we just plug the thermo aquatuner straight into the sensor. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to set up an AND gate and with the smart battery so that we don't run it unless there's a decent amount of residual juice in the battery. This is to make sure that we don't ever reach a point where it stops running the system because it runs out of power. So we're going to go disconnect this, disconnect this one as well, and we're just going to put the AND gate up here. So that's going to go here. Yep, that's fine. And then we'll put a NOT gate down here. We're going to set the smart battery to say sort of 20 degrees low threshold, 80 degrees high threshold. And then that way, it's not going to... that way, when the steam turbines stop running because of the thermosensor, there'll still be a little power left to kick things off with the aquatuner. So you're never going to be in a situation where it doesn't kick in. So that's going to plug in here, that's going to go up here, that's going to go in here, and that's going to go in here. That's what it should look like at the end. And then there's one more little bit of automation we've got to do, but we're going to do that once we've done the conveyor layout. That'll make sense in a minute. So, the conveyor rails. Make these out of semiconductive. If you have steel, great. If not, metal, well, just try and use a conductive metal. Something that's not going to melt in here. We're going to make them out of steel in this case. So we're going to load it into the loader first, and then we're going to go up here. We're going to go into the meter, and then we're going to stop. We're going to come out of here, and then we're going to lead it out. And then we're just going to snake it around the whole room. We're going to do this so that we can get the metal like nice and evenly hot throughout this. But again, it's coming out in small packets, so each metal block will exchange heat very quickly. But we'll run it around the whole room. If you're running it past the volcano, I'm not going to run it in here. You know what? We can run it. We can run it through here. Just make sure if you're running it past the volcano, that you're using a steel tile on the volcano, because otherwise that can melt, and you don't want your conveyor rail melting on the volcano. So we'll just go like this. Then we'll lead it once more through the steam, and then we'll come up here. And then all we're going to do, we're not even setting up any shutoffs or automation like we did last time. Because the little metal packets are coming out and they're so conductive, we don't actually need to automate. We don't need to loop through the large packets until they're cooled enough. We can just continuously send the small packets of metal around, and it will be absolutely fine. Even for a high heat capacity metal like aluminium. So we'll run that through the steam turbine room once, because that's getting actively cooled. And then we'll just dump it down here. So, one last thing with this build. So the only downside of having the conveyor meter and the small packets is that when we're dumping the metal, it dumps out in the small packets. This means the dupes will get a lot of errors for picking up small blobs of metal, which is not really ideal. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to put a little door here. We're going to put a little door here. We're going to put a mechanized airlock here. And then we're going to automate that on a weight plate. So actually, yeah, get rid of this building. We're going to put a weight plate here. The metal's going to be cold, so this is all fine. It doesn't matter that it's going to be conductive. So we'll put that here. We'll literally just set up the door to the weight plate and set the weight plate to 1,000 kilograms. That way, the dupes will only have access to the metal when there's a large enough amount for it to be worth grabbing. But this is important. Don't forget about this. Otherwise, your dupes are going to be running around like madmen. We can add some more tiles to finish off the look, if we want. There you go. And then you want some access out here, I guess. So sure, there's a ladder. I'll add a little extra blob of oil for some good measure. There you go, just a little bit more oil. Have fun with that. And then we'll plug that door into the wire. That's not really super important though. So it's going to go in there like that. And then we're just going to set this to everything. Everything must go. But if you want to be really safe, you just set it to the specific refined metal from the Volcano. And that will be absolutely fine. So, I believe that is actually everything set up. Now we just need the Volcano to actually erupt and generate a little bit of heat so that everything starts to kick in. Oh, we need to build the pipe over here. Okay, that's one last thing to do. So we'll just build a regular liquid pipe. I'm just going to feed that in here, and then we're just going to bridge that on here through the tile, and then that's going to come after this bridge, so it won't overfill the loop. That's another reason to put a bridge there like that. One more thing, you are going to want to put some Tempshift Plates in here as well. So we'll put some in here just to help exchange heat between everything. Again, if you're going in the oil biome, you could use diamond for this. Diamond's very conductive. It's a lot of material per Tempshift Plate, so if you don't have that much diamond, using granite or obsidian is fine as well. I wouldn't recommend using the metal itself, and also make sure the Tempshift Plates aren't touching the insulated tiles, because you don't want to leak heat into those. But definitely put them around here. You can put them down here as well, because they're not going to interact with the neutronium. And then, yeah, we'll just run some more over here. And then, yeah, we'll probably need to inject a bit more heat into this before this erupts, just for demonstration purposes. But we'll come back once Steelers analyze this again. So I'll see you in a minute. Finite supremacy. Right, okay, so you can see what's happened here. So we've got the aluminium has come out of the Volcano immediately. If we go into materials overlay, so you can see the naphtha has split in the middle because of the metal, but it hasn't, crucially, turned into sour gas. It's not quite hot enough. But if we keep looking in the material overlay at the liquids, so that drops down there, the liquid pours back in immediately, dumps into liquid uranium, and then it keeps forming. So there's the debris lumps keep falling down here around Steeler. Steeler isn't even scalding. This is a good sign. You can see the liquid's getting a bit hotter, but it's not getting hot enough to risk boiling the naphtha, and it's not getting hot enough to risk boiling crude oil. You can just use crude oil down here instead of liquid uranium. If you have uranium, use it, because it means that this isn't flowing in and out all the time. But, like, it doesn't make a difference. But you can see here, even though the Volcano overpressurizes at 150 kilograms per tile of pressure, and we've got loads of steam in here, because we have the small liquid layer of naphtha and the liquid layer of uranium, the Volcano doesn't overpressurize, no matter how much steam you put in here. And as we said before, the more steam you have in here, the more the temperature will stay at the target temperature, so the less power is going to get wasted by the steam turbines. You can lower the setting by a couple of degrees, just to set it so that it's not wasting any power. That's absolutely fine. That doesn't affect the maths too much for most of these volcanoes. But just bear in mind that if you've got a geotuned aluminium volcano, some of the spikier ones like this might actually produce enough that it would produce more heat than 2 turbines can handle. But it would have to be quite a high average output geyser. High average output volcano. But yeah, and again, you can see here, the water is coming through from the steam turbines. This is the full 4 kilograms per second of water from the steam turbines. That's dumping in the vent, even though the steam is in here, it's really high pressure, the liquid vent is still venting. If we wanted, just to demonstrate this to you, I'm not suggesting you actually fill this room with 10 tons per tile of steam. That's quite wasteful. But even with a really, really high gas pressure, the liquid vent will still run, the volcano will still run. And crucially, using naphtha here is the key to this. You do not want the second liquid over the vent tile. But if you set it up like this, it will work at whatever pressure you want. You can have it run at more or less the fixed temperature. If you're running it with 10 tons of steam per tile because you've been running your water sources for a while, you can just set this to 200. And you're not going to waste any meaningful power. And then the thermal aquatuner is going to run. That's going to cool everything down. You can see the loop filled up with polluted water from the pump. And it hasn't overfilled the loop. So that's all good. It's coming in here. Immediately cooling down. Obviously, as it's running past the steam turbines, it's generating quite a lot of heat. But now, so the key is, we haven't actually been letting the metal out through the volcano yet, because we haven't set it on here. So now we'll set this to all. And the auto sweeper will pick it up. So if we look at that, it's picked up the full eruption mass of the volcano. We left it for a while, so it's about 350 degrees. That's fine. And now what's going to happen, so we've set this to 0.5 units per second. Because we plugged the reset port into the input port, we're getting 0.5 kilogram packets out of here. This is a very useful facet of the conveyor meter that I didn't know about when we did the original video. So now you can see this metal has immediately more or less cooled down to the temperature of the environment, and we're not going to have to loop it at all, because if we run it up here, that's going to go up here, and then this liquid is 18 degrees C in here. The metal immediately cools to the temperature, and obviously some heat is being transferred, especially into this tile. But even now, like, you can see it's staying around the temperature. It is going to heat up the room gradually. It is going to heat up the coolant gradually, going through here. But then the thermal aquatuner is going to run again just fine, and then the metal goes around once. You don't need any shut-off annoyances, and it's just getting dumped in here continuously. And it'll do that until this weight plate fills up, and then your duplicant can come in here and access all of the metal, however they want. So, we're back. Steeler has done all of the geotuning errands. The volcano is now max geotuned, so it's going to produce a shocking 32.2 kilograms per second of aluminium at 2000 degrees C. And that's going to be an eruption average of 1.16 kilograms per second, which is a lot. So yeah, let's let this erupt and see what happens. One thing we will want to do, we'll want to update the flow rate on this to reflect the geotuning as well. So I'll set that to 1.163. There you go. Let out some slightly larger packets. And then we're going to let this run, and we're going to see what happens. Yeah, so you can see here, we got quite a lot of metal coming out here. The naphtha has been pushed out of the way, but it comes back, and it is behaving. The temperatures are getting quite a bit higher with the geotuning, but it settles back down pretty quickly with the Tempshift Plates and all of the steam in here. That's why we have a high steam pressure in here. But you can see we handled all of that metal coming in. We handled that 700-ish kilograms of metal coming in over 23 seconds, and we did not get any aluminium tiles forming. This happened a lot when we were testing this build, but the two liquid phases solved the issue. And yeah, the room's a little bit hotter now as well. So again, if you're geotuning it and you haven't got a huge mass of steam in here, you may want to set this to say 190, 195. Play around with it so that the peak temperature gets to about 200 C, and then it runs slightly less hot from there. But again, you can just keep filling this up with water until the temperature is constant if you have lots of water geysers on your asteroid. The more you have, the more stable it will be. But yeah, if we just talk about some of the maths for a second. So if we're geotuning it, generally you're going to want 2 steam turbines for any geotuned volcano, except for the gold and the tungsten volcanoes. Gold has a specific heat capacity of 0.1291, and tungsten has a specific heat capacity of 0.134. Neither of these are very high. Even though the metal comes out much hotter, the lack of heat energy is apparent. So you could get away with running those off of 1 steam turbine. You could have something else up here. There's a little bit of room to shift stuff around. Like, you could have the auto sweeper over here. You could have the meters over here, closer to the volcano. You could have the liquid just run over the whole room without this tile in between, if you really felt like it. And then just make sure the naphtha's covering the tiles over the volcano, and not any of the tiles over here on the liquid vent. That could work as well. If you're not geotuning it, then the only volcano that you're really going to need... The only volcano you're really going to need more than 1 turbine for is the aluminium volcano. And then if it is geotuned, because you're adding the extra heat and the aluminium starts off at a relatively low heat, you want the... you actually want to have more than 2 turbines if you have a higher flow rate on average. So in this case, this volcano is actually large enough that we wouldn't expect the 2 steam turbines here to delete all of the heat forever. Eventually, it would cool down during the dormant phase, so that's not an issue. It's not going to accumulate heat forever, but because it's higher than that threshold, the 2 steam turbines, it's going to build up a little bit of heat between all the eruptions. It's going to gradually get hotter over the active phase, and then it's going to cool down again during the dormant phase. The hard cutoff is you've got to make sure that the total average output, including the dormancy, doesn't exceed that value. Otherwise, the room will get too hot, even with the dormancy of the volcano, and then it's just going to spiral out of control. So, if you exceed that heat threshold for the eruption average, it's an amber alert. Just bear in mind the heat capacity, the heat in the room will gradually go up over the active phase. And if it's over the total average, then that's a red alert, and you need to make sure that you've put an extra turbine in, because you just don't have enough cooling. But yeah, that's the maths. I've been showing the maths on the screen while I've been talking about all of this stuff. Some tables and whatnot, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, those are my latest thoughts on metal volcanoes. You can set them up in this quick-fire set and forget method, just with a couple of liquids, just with the conveyor meter, and you end up with a setup that's very, very efficient at sort of actively cooling the metal. The metal never gets too hot. So long as you have the conductive material for it to run through, and you set it up so that you're running the metal through the liquids, and you're running the coolant from the thermal aquatuner through the liquid on the steam turbines, you can cool both the steam turbines and the metal in the same room. It will all come out here at room temperature. Your dupes can grab it when the lump gets large enough mass, and there shouldn't be any issues. 2 turbines is okay in the vast majority of circumstances. If you have a really high output aluminium volcano like this, and you don't want the room to slightly heat up during the active phase, if you don't have a lot of water to dump in here, for example, so that the temperature varies very minimally, you might want to put a 3rd turbine on here, but 99 out of 100 cases, 2 turbines is enough. And if you're not geotuning it, 1 turbine is almost always enough with this approach. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. I hope you've enjoyed this. We built this quite a lot on Twitch, actually. Maybe not exactly like this, but this general concept with the conveyor meter, we built a lot in the previous run. We're going to definitely build more of these on our current run. The sour gas or bust. This is going to form the basis of our power spine and our industry, and we're just going to set up a load of these and completely forget about them. We don't really need to boil any of the liquids on that asteroid, so it's all good. But let me know in the comments how you like to handle your metal volcanoes. We will cover niobium volcanoes at some point, but I haven't reached them on Twitch yet, so we're not gonna jump the shark on that one. They're very different because the metal tiles up at a very low threshold, only 50 kilograms rather than 160. And the Niobium volcano erupts like a magma volcano, where it's just way more metal at once than even this geotuned aluminium volcano. It's like hundreds of kilograms per second when a Niobium volcano erupts. It's absolutely mad. But yeah, let me know if you like metal volcanoes. What sort of things do you do? Do you like to have like a big sort of cooling tank or a big cooling block that you like to hook these up to? I generally don't bother with that. I just fill the room with steam and call it a day. But yeah, let me know. And I'll see you soon on Twitch, hopefully. Whiskers will see you out. Bye for now.
Whiskers sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers and YouTube members: 999999999, FRD. Gamix6, Ion Elgis, Lagbot 30,000, Quantum Zari, Stinger's Playground, Sweet Danger Kitty, and Uglavisk.